Before we read chapter 9, I need to explain to you what we have to build our strength in, and that is predicting. And when we can predict really well when we read, it's because we know the characters so well. So we've been becoming Rob in this book. We've been feeling what he feels. We've been thinking about the other characters like Sistine and Rob's father. Well, let me tell you about something that happened to me last night. My friend called. This is my best friend. And he called me last night and he said, I'm really sick. I had to go to the emergency room yesterday. And I said, oh, have you been drinking that like green smoothie stuff that you like to drink to stay healthy? And he said, yeah, I've been drinking that. And then I knew what was going to come next. So I said, is your mom coming to visit, to take care of you? And he said, yeah. Yep, she's actually on her way. She'll be here soon. I knew that his mom was going to come help him because I know my friend. I've known him for so long, and I know how he acts, and I know what he does, and I know the decisions he's probably going to make. I knew that his mom was going to come because that's the type of relationship he has with her. Now, it's important that when we read this next chapter, we really think about the characters. We think about Rob. We try and make predictions about what he's going to do next, what he's going to feel or think about next. Because we know him so well, because we've kind of almost become him when we read. Because we'll be predicting, I want to lead into chapter 9. So I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 8 and then continue forward. Rob stayed up late working on the carving, and when he finally fell asleep, he dreamed about the tiger, only it wasn't in a cage. It was free and running through the woods, and there was something on its back, but Rob couldn't tell what it was. As the tiger got closer and closer, Rob saw that the thing was Sistine in her pink party dress. She was riding the tiger. In his dream, Rob waved to her and she waved back at him, but she didn't stop. She and the tiger kept going, past Rob, deeper and deeper into the woods. What a very vivid dream. I wonder what it means. Chapter 9. His father woke him up at 5:30 the next morning. Come on, son, he said, shaking Rob's shoulder. Come on. You're a working man now. You got to get up. He took his hand away and stood over Rob for a minute more, and then he left. Rob heard the door to the motel room squeak open. He opened his eyes. The world was dark. The only light came from the falling Kentucky star. Rob turned over in bed and pulled back the curtain and looked out the window at the sign. It was like having his own personal shooting star, but he didn't ever make a wish on it. He was afraid that if he started wishing, he might not be able to stop. In his suitcase of not thoughts, there were also not wishes. He kept the lid closed on them, too. Rob leaned on his elbow and stared at the star and listened to the rain gently drumming its fingers on the roof. There was a warm, glowing kind of feeling in his stomach, a feeling that he wasn't used to. It took him a minute to name it. The tiger. The tiger was out there. He got out of bed and put on shorts and a t-shirt. Still hot, his father said when Rob stepped out the door, and still raining. Uh-huh, said Rob, rubbing his eyes. Yes, sir. If it don't stop soon, the whole state ain't gonna be nothing but one big swamp. The rain don't bother me, Rob muttered. On the day of his mother's funeral, it had been so sunshiny that it hurt his eyes. And after the funeral, he and his father had to stand outside in the hot, bright light and shake everybody's hand. Some of the ladies hugged Rob, pulling him to them in jerky, desperate movements, smashing his head into their pillowy chests. "If you don't look just like her," they told him, rocking him back and forth and holding on to that tiger tight. Or they said, "You got your mama's hair, that cobwebby blonde." And they ran their fingers through his hair and patted his head like he was a dog. And every time Rob's father extended his hand to somebody else, Rob saw the ripped place in his suit, where it had split open when he slapped Rob to make him stop crying, and it reminded Rob again, "Do not cry, do not cry." That was what the sun made him think of, the funeral. And so he didn't care if he ever saw the sun again. He didn't care if the whole state did turn into a swamp. His father stood up and went back into the motel room and got himself a cup of coffee and brought it back outside. The steam rose off of it and curled into the air. "Now that I'm a working man," Rob said shyly, "could I drink some coffee?" His father smiled at him. "Well," he said, "I guess that'd be all right." Rob went inside and poured himself a mug of coffee and brought it back outside and sat down next to his father and sipped it slowly. It tasted hot and dark and bitter. He liked it. At night, all right, his father said after about 10 minutes, "It's time to get to work." He stood up. It wasn't even 6 o'clock. As they walked together alongside the back of the motel to the maintenance shed, his father started to whistle, "Mining for Gold." It was a sad song he used to sing with Rob's mother. Her high, sweet voice had gone swooping over his father's deep one, like a small bird flying over the solid world. His father must have remembered, too, because he stopped halfway through the song and shook his head and cursed softly under his breath. Rob let his father walk ahead of him. He slowed down and stared into the woods, wanting to see some small part of the tiger, a flick of his tail, or the glow from his eyes. But there was nothing to see except for rain and darkness. "Come on, son," his father said, his voice hard, and Rob hurried to catch up. This was a really great chapter where we could become Rob, because the author talks or tells a lot about Rob's memories. We just read about the funeral and how those ladies would talk to Rob and hug him hard. We learned that Rob had to stand there and shake everybody's hand with his father. We remembered that rip in his father's suit that happened after he slapped Rob hard in the back and told him to stop crying. So we can realize that Rob is still really sad about his mom dying. And we can also realize that his dad is still sad too. Because remember, his dad started whistling that song, "Mining for Gold." And his dad used to sing it with his mom together. And her high, sweet voice had gone swooping over his father's deep tone, like a small bird flying over the solid world. But then his father stopped halfway through the song and shook his head and started cursing under his breath. His dad is still really sad too. I'm predicting that because Rob and his dad will be spending a lot more time together, that maybe they'll start to feel a little bit closer to each other. And maybe they'll start talking about Rob's mom, his dad's wife, which I think would be really healthy for them, because I can tell they don't talk about it. It says that Rob let his father walk ahead of him after his father was cursing under his breath and shaking his head. And then all his dad said was, "Come on, son." And his voice was hard. And Rob hurried to catch up. So yeah, I'm predicting that, they're spending more time together. Rob's helping him work around the motel while he has time off from school. So I think they'll probably start to talk about how they feel, maybe about Rob's mother. And maybe they'll get to feel closer together when they think and talk about her. It's your job to make a prediction now. It could be about anything. You know, Rob was also thinking a lot about the tiger in this chapter. Maybe you want to predict about that. You choose what to predict. Enjoy.